What is up, guys? Thanks for watching a Thursday edition of Jaguars United live show. We're actually excited because tonight it's not just me riding solo. I have a special guest with me tonight, but before I introduce him, and you guys, some of you know him already, but we're going to be talking about the future of the Jags and the future of this offseason, what they might do with the free agents, what they might do with the draft, some prospects. I got someone that really knows what they're talking about here tonight. Before we jump into that, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure to follow the Twitter. Make sure to follow the Instagram, all that other stuff. And it'll be a good time for sure. That way you get notifications when we do shows like tonight that are off schedule. So without further ado, I got to bring in somebody that I really, really respect when it comes to the world of football. And that is Bubba from CFB Cauldron. All right, Bubba. So while I get the right screen going here, Bubba breaks down film kind of the way I do. He looks at football as a football player, X's and O's, but he also does recruiting breakdowns on college prospects, watches a lot of college football, has his own YouTube channel where he talks about college football, NFL, all that other thing. So Bubba, thanks for coming on, and how's it going?
Doing pretty good. I appreciate you having me back on. I don't want to say I'm good luck, but you brought me on the week before the season started, and the Jags went on to make the playoffs. So
That is true. That is true. I mean, maybe you are indeed our good luck charm here for the Jaguars. So, how's the channel going? Everything going good? You've been covering like college football. Did you dip into the Jags at all? How'd everything go?
yeah. So now, obviously, with the season ending, both the Jags season ending and the college football season ending, we're turning heavy towards draft now. I was talking to you about this a little earlier. I did 3 different player breakdowns today that I'm going to be posting over the next few days. So we're turning really draft heavy. And because I'm a Jags fan, I'm naturally looking at guys that would fall towards the 24th pick, guys that maybe like I did 3 cornerbacks today. The Jags may need a nickel cornerback, looking at guys who the Jags may pick, looking at guys they may get in the second round. So we're just moving towards that time of year where it's all in on the draft combine coming up here in a few weeks. So I'm super stoked this time of year.
So, those of you that are everyone in my chat's always saying things like telling me like what do you think about these players, what do you think about these players? So now is the time to get into the chat and ask about these players, because Bubba will know all about these players. He's been watching the recruits where I don't do my dive until later. So before we get into the show, if you're not following Bubba on Twitter or YouTube, go and like his or go subscribe to his YouTube channel, go follow his Twitter, all that stuff. I mean, he has a lot of good content out there. This is a fan channel here, so Bubba's a fan like me, and me and him. Bubba's one of the smarter people when it comes to football. That's why I have him on whenever I can. Nolly Full Cab was the first one in the chat. He's a channel member. He spams the Blake Bortles emojis. Corey T, who is the channel benefactor, right? We owe all this to Corey T. Thank you. He's second in the chat. Was almost first. We have a bunch of people excited. Volkfang's in here. He never makes the live show. Shout out to Eddie. He's probably trying to go to bed, but I'm glad that he's here. DJM, C Breacher, channel members in here. So DJM says Bubba, more like Hubba. I like that. I agree. I agree. Hey, so Bubba, what are your thoughts right out of the gate on the Jags? Obviously, you were impressed, like we all were, but what was your takeaways from the end of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I came on your channel right before the season started. And I think I predicted 6 to 7 wins. I didn't think the personnel was quite there yet. I thought we were probably a year away from kind of taking over the division. I mean, coach of the year, it should be a lock. I mean, I understand that Brian Dable, I'm a big Dable fan. He did a great job with the Giants, but Dable or Joe Judge wasn't going around kicking players and cheating on his wife at bars. I mean, like this franchise was just in disarray. I actually talked to Jaguar, someone who works in the organization. And he said it's almost like a prop plane went and crashed, and they had to pick up the parts, walk it back to the airport, and build it from practically scratch. And that's a perfect analogy for what the Jags were like from 2021 to 2022. But I can't say enough good things about Doug Peterson, as I'm sure most people in your chat can't. What he was able to do, not only was he able to do, but able to do in such a short period of time is truly amazing. And I think one of the more interesting things that came out of the Kansas City game is obviously they have reporters do interviews all week going into the game. At one point, I think Collinsworth said that Doug said that we are only about 50% into this offense. And that has to excite you. I mean, because we saw what this offense was able to do this year. And the fact that we're just kind of getting into it, only halfway there, is really exciting heading into the future.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of been my takeaway. I've told everyone like the key to being a good NFL team is having a coach and having a quarterback. And for the first time, I think the Jags have had both at the same time. I mean, you think back to Mark Brunell and Tom Coughlin, and I think Doug Peterson is a better X's and O's, and I think Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback. So
Mhm.
definitely, that's the recipe. That's the key for me. I do want to address Timothy Connors, who says, "Hang on, isn't this the Davis Mills is better than Trevor Lawrence guy? This is not the same guy."
This
Okay,
no,
Bubba would
absolutely.
never make a mistake like that.
I
Absolutely.
I was team quick story. So went to the Bears game in 2020. This was COVID season, limited seating. Half if anyone, I'm sure there's probably a few channel members, people in the chat that were at that game as well. Limited seating. I had a buddy. He's like, "Hey, I have a ticket. I can get you in." I was like, "Sweet." I taped 16 on my back. Oh, it's still, I have the hoodie right here. I can go grab the hoodie because the outlines of the tape are still. I would tape 16 on my back, and I cheered for the Bears the entire game. I mean, like I came last time I was on your channel. I was adamant that Trevor's not the issue because obviously coming off a rough rookie year, people were a little concerned. I was pretty adamant that Trevor was not the issue. I think he more than proved himself this past season.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
Who said that Davis Mills that was on your channel was better than Trevor?
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And to be honest, the person that said that has been vying to try to get back on to try to justify. And I think his reason was he was trying to just have a hot take. I think that's what he's going to try to say. But I will have him on to let him defend himself. But Bubba is like a guy who watches a lot of college football. Okay, he watches a lot of college football. So I know a lot of people want to know like who the Jags may target in the draft. And I know a lot of that depends on what they do with the cap and what they do with the free agents and all of that. We can get to that in a second. But if you're just going off of your gut instincts, like who are some good fits that you for Jacksonville that you think will be there at our pick?
So I think obviously free agency happens first. So I think we can have two scenarios, one with Evan Ingram and one without Evan Ingram. If it's without Evan Ingram, then I think they probably go tight end. We've seen a lot of people over the past few days mock. I think Daniel Jeremiah did as well. Mock tight end to the Jags. I saw one person say, "Oh, they'll re-sign Evan Ingram and then still draft tight end." I don't see that happening. But if Evan Ingram is gone, I think they go tight end. And if there's one thing that I know that Trent Baalke loves, it's a player coming off of an injury. Trent Baalke loves guys that just tore their knee up and blew their shoulder out, and he loves drafting them high. Luke Musgraves is a tight end from Oregon State. He only played 2 games this past season because he hurt his knee. So that's a guy that you may think, and he's also a pretty good pass catcher. Dalton Kincaid was a benefit of injury. Brant Kuithe was the starting tight end for the Utah Utes heading into the season. He had a massive 2021 season and also a massive Florida game. I think he had 13 catches for over 150 yards, some crazy numbers like that against Florida. He hurt his knee. Dalton Kincaid stepped in and then went ahead and did the same thing for the rest of the season for Utah. So those are two guys you could look at. Now, if we do resign Evan Ingram, which I personally hope we do, but if we are able to get Evan Ingram back, I don't know what you think about this, Jason, but I think probably slot corner is the biggest need at that point. What do you think?
I mean, again, it depends a lot on what they do. I mean, oh, shout out to Sea Breacher, who has become a member on the Matt Jones level. And I think Sea Breacher has been a member he's been a member for a long time. So the fact that he is a member again, thank you so much. He wants to know, tell me about some tight ends not named Michael Mayer. And I think Bubba just touched on that a little bit on some guys that he likes. And before I get to before I think that they will position they'll draft. What do you think about Darrell Washington out of Georgia?
Darnell Washington?
Yeah, Darnell Washington.
Oh, he's probably, I mean, I don't think he's a fit for the Jaguars. I watching college football, you just fall in love with certain teams and players. I mean, you're going back, you're watching games. There's a few guys you fall in love with. Darnell Washington's one of them. I don't know what he's listed at. I think it's 6'7", 270. He's at least 290 pounds. I mean, he is an alien. And go back and watch the Oregon game. He called a flat route, stiff armed the defender into the crust of the earth, and then hurdled the guy immediately after. I mean, freak athlete. I mean, looks unhuman. And the biggest factor about having Darnell Washington on the field is he can split out, and he did during the national championship game. He had one catch, and it was a deep seam from the slot receiver position. But he's not going to be the Travis Kelce's of the world. He's not going to be going out catching 10 passes a game. He is a third tackle that can also happen to go out and catch passes. I absolutely love him. there's going to be a team that are probably going to draft him as their second tight end. And he's going to be an absolutely massive upgrade wherever he goes in running the football, just because you get that third tackle that also happens to be eligible and also happens to be a freak athlete out there. I love Darnell Washington. I don't think he fits what the Jags need, but if we draft him, I'd still be ecstatic just because I love the player.
He kind of reminds me of like a better Chris Manhertz. Am I off there a little bit? Like a more athletic, bigger, but kind of does the same thing.
Think more athletic Mercedes Lewis is probably a decent comp, I would say. I mean, because I think Manhertz, very limited when it comes to catching the football, and we all know that. But I think more Mercedes Lewis, where he does have some athleticism, but he's going to be used primarily as a blocker. But he can be dangerous if you get him out in space with a smaller defender. So think more Mercedes Lewis than Chris Manhertz, I'd say.
Okay. All right. And for me, I think our biggest position of need, depending on what we do, I think we find a way to bring Ingram back because I think he wants to be here. Now, when it comes to Juwan Taylor, I think a guy like Juwan Taylor hits the open market. We can get to that. I want to ask you that in a second. But, I mean, if we don't find a way to bring back Roy Robertson Harris, I think you have a glaring need somewhere on the front
Interior.
Seven, right? So, I've heard talks of moving Travon Walker inside to big end, and then now you need an edge rusher, right? So some sort of front seven player that's not a linebacker, right? Either an edge or a tackle or an end or something like that. So that could be where they go depending on how the draft board falls. But we do know that this front office is going to take the best available player. We saw that when they took Muma just 2 rounds after taking Devin Lloyd. So I think they're just going to take best available player. If that's an offensive lineman, I mean, if Juwan Taylor doesn't come back, because I think Juwan Taylor is going to make $14 million a year on the open market. So, yeah. I mean, I think tackle or interior lineman could be a viable choice there because a good teams have 6 linemen. I mean, that's the bottom line. You have to be 6 deep at least. And
the Jags had to go 7 deep this year.
Right, exactly. I mean, thank God we were 7 deep. I mean, thank God we were up Shatley and Walker Little come off the bench. So I think depending on how they do it, that's why it's hard to make a Roy Robertson Harris. I see some legend in the chat says under contract, but they save I think like $6 or $7 million.
I got it right here. Actually,
they cut him.
It's close, just a little under $8 million if they cut him.
Yeah, so I mean they do save money there, and I know there's a lot of talk about restructuring deals, and without getting into like the nitty gritty of what it means to restructure a deal, there's multiple ways to do it. There's one way to just basically pay out a player all of his money up front, and that kind of frees up money. And then there's also you can go to them and say, hey, can we extend your contract, give you your guaranteed money? And you can do that with players that have proven they're worth their contract, right? That's the downside is you're risking players that aren't worth their contract getting paid more money. But we know Aluakon's worth his contract. We know Kirk is worth his contract. So we could do it with those type of players. But what do you see, like realistically, like if you're bulky, what do you try to get done with the free agent situation that we have right now?
To be honest with you, my ideal situation, and this is going to be difficult to do. I mean, this is just kind of pipe dream more than anything else. Find a team that needs a tackle that has a lot of salary cap. I'm looking at you, Chicago Bears, and try to get Cam Robinson's contract off the books because I don't know if there was that big of a drop off between when Walker Little came in and when Cam Robinson was playing. I don't know your take on it, but I think you try. I mean, because Cam Robinson's a $22 million cap hit. If you can get Juwan Taylor at 14, you're kind of pseudo saving yourself $8 million while having a guy on a rookie contract play left tackle. It's going to be hard to do. You're not going to get a lot of an exchange because of the contract and Cam's coming off an injury. But that's something I would love to do. I mean, just kind of keep the setup that you had at the end of the year. The last 4 or 5 games of the season, you had Juwan at right, Walker Little at left. It's not going to be easy to do. But we've seen that Walker Little has been able to step in at right tackle at moments. It's not his natural position, but he's capable of doing it. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the restructuring contracts because I see people just throw out, restructure Jenkins, restructure Roy Robertson Harris. And the issue with that is you want guys that are going to be here for a decent amount of time. I think Aluakon and Kirk are 2 prime examples of guys that you could restructure. Other people, you don't want that. I mean, Roy's getting old. Rashawn's getting kind of old. You don't want to extend their contracts longer than they really have to be at this point, I think.
Yeah, I know, and unfortunately, I think that's the only way that you can make a deal work for Juwan Taylor. I mean, he's the guy that I really have the hardest time finding a way to bring back because he's going to be so sought after. Like, I think that's the guy that the Bears go after. I mean, I think the
Yeah,
Bears back the Brinks truck up for Juwan Taylor and they just solidify at right tackle because today in the NFL, you have to have both tackles. I mean, is the left tackle more important than the right? Maybe slightly, but if you don't have a
not
right tackle, I mean, you're in trouble. I mean, look at what the Chiefs have done, man. I mean, I draw their comparison every chance I get. I mean, they let Tyreek Hill walk, use that money invested into the offensive line, and they're right back into the AFC Championship game. So it's possible to do it that way. It'd be interesting to see what happens. UCF Jaguar in the chat. It's good to see him in the chat. I think he had a video. I clicked on my YouTube notifications, and it was like 7 new videos from UCF Jaguar, 9 new videos from Brett James. And I was like, oh, dang, these guys are out there grinding this week.
put in
So,
work.
yeah, so I'm glad that I'm able just to keep up. But UCF Jaguars got some good content out there. He says, we went from playoff talk to draft talk real quick. It's off-season, UCF. It's off-season. It's what we do.
Hey, are we gonna linger on the Chiefs game? We got to move on
Yeah.
with our lives at some point.
Exactly. And UCF Jaguar and me talk about all the time that we're not draft experts, right? But that's what Bubba is, right? So if you haven't yet followed his Instagram, his Twitter and his YouTube, go do that now. He's got a lot of good content. I watch his content to get information, and people watch my content to get information. So vis-a-vis, if you like the information that you're getting, go follow Bubba at CFBCauldron. You can go check that out for sure. So Juwan Taylor, a guy I'm not too sure about. Do you have any hesitation? And let me just ask you this, because I'm afraid to say it by myself because so I'm afraid to commit to
You don't want
this.
to get ganged up on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's tough out there. So there's a tiny bit of me that has some hesitation about Rayshon Jenkins and Roy Robertson Harris because they ended the season on a high note, but all of last season and a little bit of the beginning of the season, there was probably questions about whether they're worth their contract. So is there any hesitation for you, particularly with those two guys, are they worth their contract? And would you be worried about restructuring those deals?
I definitely stay clear of restructuring those two. I mean, because their cap, they don't have massive cap hits this offseason, and it gets even low. I think Roy's a free agent, and Rayshon's he's either a free agent or it's really low after next season. I feel slightly better about Rayshon. I think Mike Caldwell's defense, the just aggressive nature, having a safety play down the box, I think that fit him a lot better than what Joe Cullen was doing last year. Roy was, on the other hand, I mean, I think I talked to you about this sometime in October, and I think it was pretty clear consensus that our biggest need heading into the draft, heading into the offseason, was interior defensive line. Not so sure now, just because, I mean, even I know Corey Peters said he's retiring, but he played great. I mean, I was watching the Titans game. I was up in section 411, basically watching the game from the moon. And I could tell that Corey Peters was just disrupting the game from all the way up where I was watching the game. I mean, Trayvon played great. I mean, so those guys, I mean, I know Trayvon plays edge, but the interior defensive line played great down the stretch. But I mean, and part of it Foley was coming back off that ankle injury. We really struggled as a team when he wasn't in there. But yeah, I think I'm a little concerned about Roy just because the production was there at the end of the year. It was a big need. We thought it was going to be a big need. And now that talk seems to quiet. And I agree that the talk should quiet just based off their end of the play year. I mean, I went and looked at 3 or 4 corners today because I think corner's probably the position we're probably going to be looking at 24. Like you said, Balky likes to take the best available position or the best available player at whatever position. If it's interior defensive line, we may move on from Roy at that point, but it's kind of hard to tell. And that's also going to be after free agency. So some of this stuff will sort itself out before the draft, but it's going to be interesting. The front office actually has moves they're going to have to make this offseason to get under the cap.
Yeah, those are all good points. I want to hit some of these comments, and then we're gonna take a quick 1-2 minute break just to reset the Zoom so that we can keep this conversation going, and then we'll bring Bubba back for about 15-ish minutes, and I wanted to get your take on some draft prospects, especially at the corner position, and things like that. So. Legend says Roy Robertson Harris is under contract. Yeah, I would talk about it being cut. Cash Shoots says, who thinks Jordan Smith can make a comeback? Hoping he can add good depth if Smoot can't come back. Now, Smoot's an interesting person because Smoot was a really up-and-coming player for us, really coming into his own, but then that injury like kind of really derailed his chances of coming back here in Jacksonville just because of the cap hit and all of that. So I think he'll get a chance somewhere else. Definitely get a shot next year. But do you see any chance at Smoot coming back on the roster this year?
I mean, back-to-back years, one of our better players on the team is blowing out their Achilles in New York. I mean, I think we got to take a look at the field there. I mean, just say that's a little bit of a coincidence. I'm just putting that out there. But I mean, it depends. I mean, he's been in the league for a little bit now. He's not young by NFL terms. We'll see what he gets on the open market. I think Sport Trek said he'd get $13 million on the open market, and you're kind of scratching my head at that one. But I think it all just depends on the price. I think that's the guy you let go out there feel. He was a very productive player. I think he's a great rotational piece along our defensive line. That's someone you're kind of fine with them going out and testing the open market and then kind of seeing if you can get in for lower than what other teams are getting in for.
Those like estimated values on Spotrac are so wonky. I mean,
Jawan Taylor's at like $6 million,
right.
which if that's the case, sign me up now.
Yeah,
but
if that's the case, I can put a collective together. We could probably raise that money to get him back for $6 million, and not like the Rashada deal where
as long as you're not the Gator Collective and you actually have the money.
As long as you're not the Gator Collective, we might be able to bring him back at that much.
College football is so much. I love watching the Jags, but I mean, like college football as a sport collectively as a whole is so much fun to watch. I mean, you get like Hugh Freeze hiring like strippers at Ole Miss. You get Rashada like signing his national letter of intent and then like not even showing up to Florida, like calling them up and they're like, yeah, we don't have your money for you. I mean, like it's such a great sport. It's so off the chains. It's like watching The Bachelor. That's what college football's like, just on a day-to-day basis.
There's definitely going to be a 30 for 30 one day. Just looking back at like this first couple years of the NIL and kind of how that happened. Not to mention with COVID and players getting the extra year and all of that. It's going to be an interesting time to look back on. A couple more comments. Jaggernaut says, "What's up, Jags United?" Not much. I'm here with Bubba from CFBCauldron. I've known Bubba for a long time. Bubba and me talk football all the time, not just on this channel. So it's nice to have him on this channel so you guys can hear this is what our conversations are like when we're not recording, and this is just how we talk to each other. DJM says, Bubba, the wide receivers from 2022 rookies were meh, and the 2021 receivers were amazing. Where do you rank these upcoming wide receivers draft class? Could we get a steal at the 24th pick? But before you answer that, I'm gonna tease that because we have to take a short little break because we're about to run out of time here on our Zoom. We're not Zoom Pro. I don't use Zoom very often, so we're gonna take like a 1 minute break here. Okay, 1 minute break, and then we're gonna reset the Zoom, and then we're gonna get Bubba's take on the receivers draft class coming out this year and the corners because I think that's where a lot of people think the draft might go. So hang tight, give us like 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, so we are back, and while I get Bubba here set up right, because now I have to readjust the camera. Appreciate you guys being patient. Wait, here we go. All right. Appreciate you guys being patient with us. I'm actually interested in this question. We had a question before we took the break here about the wide receiver class. And so this is from DJM, and he said the receivers from the 2022 class were meh, but the 2021 class, obviously, they were really good. So what are your thoughts on this year's receiving class coming out, and can we get a steal if we wanted to at 24?
I would push back a little bit on the 2022 receivers being meh. Um, Garrett Wilson had 1,100 yards with a combination of Joe Flacco, Chris Streveler, Mike White, and Zach Wilson throwing him the football. Andy Dalton was throwing to Chris Olave. Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky were throwing to George Pickens. Jahan Dotson had Carson Wentz. So I think, and then Drake London had Desmond Ridder and Marcus Mariota. So I think the 2022 receiver class is still going to be very good. I think part of it was just how good those teams were. A lot of those, actually, I think everyone I just named missed the playoffs. But a lot of them have really bad quarterbacks as well. So the situation, Kenny Pickett and George Pickens will probably be pretty good in Pittsburgh. Some of those situations will get better. Hopefully, Garrett Wilson gets a pretty good quarterback thrown to him next year. But as far as the 2023 class, it's a little different. Last year, we had that middle of the first round run on receivers. Olave, Wilson, Jameson Williams came back late from the year in injury. He looked pretty solid in limited action. We had a run. Jahan Dotson, who a lot of people didn't think was a first round draft pick, went at number 16 overall. So we had that little run on receivers. The receiver position's more valued than ever just because you want that Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen's kind of connection. So there's a potential that maybe if one receiver goes off the board, we have a little bit of a run like we did last year. Maybe Quinn Johnson goes earlier, which causes receivers to get moved up the board, which causes them to get picked earlier. I don't know how much I love receiver at 24. I think the value comes in the second round because it's not a very deep receiver class. There's some good prospects a little later, but you kind of have this top end crop like we do most years. That top end crop, I would look at to our second round pick, a guy that I'm really high on. That if he falls to the second round, not super likely, but if he does make it all the way to our pick in the second round, is Josh Downs from North Carolina. I think he's much, much better than advertised. You don't hear his name a lot because he didn't come from a big school. He didn't come from the Ohio States of the world. But Josh Downs from North Carolina, I think in the second round would be steal. I would love that pick if he was there.
You mentioned one of my favorite peoples in the draft last year, Jameson Williams. I
You
loved.
wanted to
I,
full disclosure, Jason wanted to take Jameson Williams at number one, and I did not disagree with him on it either.
I mean, listen. I mean, who would have given us more production this year, Travon Walker or Jameson Williams? Okay,
I still really like I still like Trayvon. I mean, I'm not going to give up on Trayvon. I mean, I know
I'm
there's
not
some
giving
Jags
up on
fans.
Trayvon either. I'm just talking about like some of all parts. You put Arden Key at full-time edge rusher. You don't have to go out and get a Zay Jones. The Jags didn't start winning until he was
He came
healthy
back anyway.
anyways. So I mean, like I still stand by that, and I
still love Jameson Williams also.
Jameson Williams is going to be the best receiver since I think Justin Jefferson, but we'll see.
Really?
I do. I think so. So
Wow.
so where would you compare if you were to compare this year's receivers coming out to last year's receivers? Who do you think are going to be better?
Last year's receiving core. I think this year has a lot of number twos. I think you look at a guy like Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison reminds me of a lot of Devontae Smith. I mean, both are Biletnikoff winners. Both, I mean, one went to USC, went to Alabama. Reminds me a lot of Devontae Smith. Same thing with Josh Downs. I just see a lot of number twos with Quentin Johnston being kind of the high ceiling, low floor, potential number one Julio Jones kind of guy. But beyond him, I think you're going to see mostly number twos. Another guy I do love, I didn't even mention, is Zay Flowers from Boston College because he's had no production at quarterback and still was able to eclipse 1,000 yards receiving. It was kind of style play. I'm not saying he is Antonio Brown, but style play is very similar to Antonio Brown, body build and all.
Okay, so you gave us your rundown on wide receivers, and if you enjoyed that, which I enjoyed it, so I'm sure everyone here in the chat enjoyed that. All of Bubba's links are in the show description. So if you go in the show description and you click on it, it'll have his Twitter, it'll have his YouTube. Go ahead and go on there and subscribe and all of that stuff to his stuff. He does great stuff. So the position that everyone, I mean, because realistically, even if we don't draft the replacement for nickel corner, Like, let's say we love Trey Herndon, right? For whatever reason. The realistically, guys like Dewey Wingard, Daniel Thomas, Chris Claybrooks, they're going to get cut. So you're going to have to replace the special teams depth, if not anything. So who are some corners, maybe first round, maybe later? Who are some corners that you like that you think would be good fits in Jacksonville?
So do you want to start at nickel corner or more of it? Because the reason I was talking about nickel more than outside corner is because Doug came out in his press conference, his end of the season press conference, and said they really like Darius on the outside. And he played really good once we moved him to the outside. Him and Tyson seemed to be a good tandem. So if they were to go corner in the first round, which I think would be a good pick at that number at 24, I would probably say it's going to be someone who's played more nickel than play outside. So do you want to talk? You want to talk outside or nickel?
Yeah. So who are some guys you like at the nickel?
So 3 nickel guys. This corner class is insane, by the way. I mean, I think this is the deepest top 10 corner class maybe ever. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy corner class. A lot of people have players ranked. They have their personal favorites. There's 3 guys that really played a lot of nickel in college, or a lot of slot cornerback, whatever you want to call the position, star, one of those things. That's going to be Brian Branch from Alabama, who a lot of Jags fans have been high on. He's also he's more of a true star to where he's a safety corner hybrid. You're going to get Clark Phillips, who's every draft you have that prospect you fall in love with. I think it's probably going to be being Clark Phillips this draft cycle. I think I'm going to be in a committed relationship with him. And then also Cam Smith from South Carolina, very, very non-slot cornery. I mean, 6'1", long arms, kind of thin, lanky. You're almost prototypical NFL corner nowadays. But he played slot at South Carolina a lot, and he did pretty well in there as well. So those are 3 guys I'd keep an eye on. I would love Clark Phillips there just because the Caldwell defense. We're more aggressive than most NFL teams. We're going to play man. We'll leave our slot corner on a matchup. And I just keep having nightmares of CD Lamb just cooking Trey Herndon over and over and over again. I think you want a guy that has a lot of experience playing man against top receivers. I think Clark Phillips gives that to you. He was great in the Rose Bowl last year against Ohio State. He had a pick on Marvin Harrison Jr., went over top of him and got it. He had a forced fumble against Jackson Smith in the Jigba. He had 6 interceptions this past season. He's highly productive. And also the Utah scheme with Morgan Scaley as their defensive coordinator, they're going to leave their corners on an island every once in a while. I mean, they play a lot of man and they'll be aggressive. You're going to get tested. You went up against guys like Mario Williams and Jordan Addison from USC, Dante Thornton, and a lot of other Oregon receivers. He's battle tested. He's a little guy. He's only 5'10", 180, but he's freak athlete, twitchy, quick hips, and he also gets interceptions, which I know you like from your corners.
Absolutely. I mean, I like those opportunistic guys, right? That's what attracted me to Andre Sisco from his Syracuse days, back in his IMG days, right?
Exactly. There's some people that just have a knack, There's people that have a knack for getting the football. And Clark Phillips, he only played 31 games in college because he was a true freshman in 2020. 9 interceptions over 31 games, which is a pretty good number, especially at the position that he was playing. He played outside, but I think more this year they moved him inside a little bit more, just because nowadays that's where the better receivers are playing inside, if we're being honest, especially at the college level.
So I haven't dived into the film yet, but do you get any, when it comes to Brian Branch, do you get any Ronnie Harrison vibes at all from him?
You know what, Mike? I wrote a Brian Branch player breakdown. I'm gonna post it tomorrow. My comparison, as far as playing style, was Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. So it's a little different because Kyle Hamilton played a little more free, where Brian Branch played a little more of that star position. But Brian Branch is all over the field. I don't know. I love Brian Branch. I don't know if that's what the Jags need, though, because I don't think he's an elite man-to-man corner. I think schematics helped him a lot. He wasn't on the best receiver that often. And also, I think a lot of times he's blitzing. He's coming up playing zone. I think the Jags, just because of the style the Jags defense play, and feel free to disagree with me on this, Jason, just because of the style of defense the Jags play, you're going to want a lockdown corner at the nickel position. I don't think it's quite as important to have that big physical guy that can guard tight ends and tackle as well. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched much of him. I just get worried about those box safeties out of Alabama because sometimes they work out, but then, like you said, sometimes they're a product of their scheme. And you know, the ultimate defensive backs coach, Nick Saban, right? When it comes to those guys, I mean, he can make guys look really, really good. Honestly, I like corners that come out of like Florida State, man. Those guys, I mean, they just, whether it's, you know, Asante Samuel, Derwin James, Jalen Ramsey, I mean, the list goes on and on, man. That's where I'd tap into for some corners, right? So I know they have a safety that's projected to be like kind of a late round pick,
Jamie Robinson.
yeah, and so that could be a guy that maybe I could see coming in, because I think we're going to ultimately have a need at safety, just because I don't know, man. Something worries me about Jenkins. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
Even if he is the answer, I mean, we've seen safeties fall off quick, especially those like physical come downhill safeties. Those guys can drop off quick. So I think they're going to definitely address depth there, even if they address the nickel position first. I think they're just going to have to fill the roster at the defensive back position a lot anyways.
If you want I don't know how long he's going to be on the board, maybe third or fourth round. But if you want maybe a Rayshawn Jenkins replacement where it's going to be a guy that's going to be playing in the box more, coming down, being more of the enforcer, go look up JL Skinner from Boise State's highlight tape. It will by 6'4", 220 at the safety position. He's not going to guard too many guys, if we're being completely honest. He may do a decent job on tight ends if that's what we're looking for. I mean, obviously it's up to personnel fit. JL Skinner is a guy that his highlight tape will just blow you away. He's a guy that you're going to fall in love with just off of his highlight tape.
Is he Taylor Mays? Is he Taylor Mays 2.0?
Kind of. I mean, like linebacker, like he's, I mean, you don't see many DBs 6'4", 220 nowadays, because nowadays we call that a linebacker. I mean, that's just the way the NFL's moving. I mean, but he played safety a lot in the box, but he did play safety. I mean, just blowing. I mean, he's probably going to get fined every week, which I know Jags fans are fine with, because Cisco has kept getting fined throughout the season also. But I mean, he's a guy that if you are looking for that middle round safety replacement for Rayshawn Jenkins, or because not necessarily replacement, but a guy, hey, people get injured. You have to build depth. If you want more depth at the safety position, you want a guy to potentially step in for Rayshawn, he could be an option in the middle rounds.
Ron Beedry says in the chat, Jason rarely asked for permission to disagree with someone, LOL, but he likes folks that give their opinion. That's why he tunes into the show. What's funny is that Bubba and me, like I said, when we talk outside of this channel, we talk X's and O's as it is. So like, I can only imagine what outside observers think when they hear us talk, because we're talking about like, you know, 3-4 defenses and outside linebackers lining up in the 9 technique and things like that. And it gets real dense for people that don't know. And so we're actually trying to keep it kind of tame here, because as much as I would love to dive into why I think the Jags should switch to a 3-3-5 and just move Josh Allen, and they should move Travon Walker to the inside, and then just move Dewey Wingard down to a star position and Rayshawn Jenkins to a star, and just play a Andre Cisco in the middle of the field. That way you can get Devin Lloyd, Chad Muma, and Aluakon on the field at the same time.
Let's just go crazy while we're at it. Let's go crazy while we're at it and go full like TCU, Arkansas, 3-2-6. 3-2-6, 6 defensive back. Let's just use all of our draft picks on defensive back. Jason, I don't think you understand how much I would love. I mean, it's not going to work out. I mean, it never does. I mean, that's what, and obviously I follow college football very closely. That's what college football is nowadays. I mean, it's what you do is you have 3 down linemen. They hold the point of the attack. And you have a lot of fast guys on the field to come up and tackle. I mean, that's all it is. It's try to slow the running back down. And getting a little nerdy and off topic here, but I mean, you think of the TCU Michigan matchup. Everyone's like, oh, Michigan's going to ground and pound TCU. They're little. They're from the Big 12. TCU averaged like 1.5 yards more per carry than Michigan. Why? Well, because Michigan kept trying to run dives. They kept trying to run. I mean, they were running dives, gap schemes, zone schemes. TCU was just holding the point of attack, making the running back and offensive lineman stop their feet and coming and tackling them. And then TCU was just running these quick inside zones that was too fast for Michigan's defense.
Well,
so that's the way.
I thought that Michigan would have a chance when they started using like the tight end and the fullbacks, and they started getting into that like 22 personnel. Because if you get a hat on a hat, and you could just literally just turn your defensive lineman at the point of attack to the direction you want to, and then you just lead block, get a hat on a hat, you should be able to get 3 yards a carry at minimum. So I was one of these people that thought Michigan would be able to do that. But TCU flew to the ball. I guess their defensive coordinator out schemed in Michigan. They got to the point of attack. They defeated blocks with speed, and I mean, I was surprised that Michigan couldn't run the ball on them. To be honest,
Yeah, I mean, they averaged 4.7 yards per carry, but if you know Michigan, that's not a very good clip. I mean, they're that 6-7 team that's going to wear you down, get better as the game progresses. I mean, the way to beat these 3-2-6s and 3-3-5 defenses, it's play action and taking deep shots. It's throwing the ball, because I mean, you have all these fast guys on the field, but these fast guys have to play run defense. So there's a lot of opportunities to get them get them slipping, get guys behind them because they're playing too aggressive, because they have to come up and fill in the run game. So it's kind of counterintuitive, because people think like, oh, there's a lot of small guys on the field. Let's run the football. But that defense flew to the football this year, which is why some teams will get deep shots in behind them.
And I mean, and to be fair though, Michigan lost that game because of the costly
turnover. Yeah.
So if Michigan eliminates those turnovers, I think they win that game easy. So I don't think there was a problem with Michigan's game plan. I think it came down to the execution, which
also I think most people thought Michigan was just going to pound the ball the entire game. Michigan scored because they were launching the ball deep. I mean, you remember Roman Wilson had that touchdown, they got called back, and then they fumbled on the next play. I mean, Michigan, a lot of their offense were off of deep passes, though. I mean, they weren't running the ball, because JJ McCarthy in his press conference pregame earlier in the week said like, oh, we're going to go all Big Ten on them, and then they have to end up throwing the ball to getting the offense to work, which is, it's kind of funny. But
so, as you know, just a quick off topic. And
yeah, no, we're horribly off topic right now.
No, that's fine. I don't want to go too much longer, to be honest, but I do want to ask you this question. You may have noticed behind me, we've replaced the Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche jersey with the AFC repeat champions, Cincinnati Bengals. And so I have the Hayden Hurst jersey behind me. If Evan Ingram doesn't come back next year, like let's say they can't get a deal done, his agents do a quick 360, they decide they want to hit the open market, the Jags decide not to franchise tag Evan Ingram, any desire to see your boy Jacksonville native Hayden Hurst signed with this team?
Bulls product, and bring him home, baby. Jaguar fans have been clamoring for Hayden Hurst for like 5 years now. It's like Hayden Hurst, like even in the draft. I mean, how old is Hayden Hurst? I think he's 31 now.
Yeah, that's okay. Because nothing wrong with 30-year-olds, Bubba. Nothing wrong with 30-year-olds. All right.
No, because didn't he play pro baseball and then go back to college? Because he's like graduated college at 27. He's been in the league for a while now. I mean, I guess. I mean, I'd rather to be honest with you, I'd rather draft someone. I mean, sure. I mean, it depends. I mean, I'd rather sign. I mean, there's like 4 different things I'd rather do, but if none of those work out, I guess we could bring the Bulls kid back home.
That's it, man. All right, Sea Breacher wants to know what Bubba thinks of Zach Harrison.
The defensive lineman?
You tell me. I'm
Wait, give me 1 second.
it
I told Jason this a little earlier. I just started my draft stuff today. I'm a little behind schedule.
And that's still light years ahead of where most people are when it comes to this. But is he a D lineman?
I believe so. Yeah, Ohio State kid. Yeah, defensive end. So I just haven't watched too much film on Ohio, because I was actually watching Ohio State on the other side of the football today, because I was watching Clark Phillips last year. I know he's a pretty versatile guy. If Ohio State goes 3 down linemen, they can put him at edge. I mean, they could go that 3rd down kind of NASCAR, Ferrari set, or whatever you want to call it, to where they can put him outside, but he can also kick inside. So he seems like a guy, like I said, haven't watched the most film on Ohio State's defense yet. I'll get to that eventually. But he seems like a guy that can offer you some position versatility. If it's a little later in the draft, might as well do that. I mean, you can always, like I said, I'm a big fan of building depth along the lines of scrimmage. So is Jason. Jason was talking about earlier, you really need 6 to 7 offensive linemen. I feel the same way about offense and defensive line. So if you're going to build depth, get a late round guy that can also offer you position versatility, which is always a big plus.
Yeah, I mean, or you could just bring in a coach like Kyle Shanahan, and it doesn't matter who you have, and you can just win games no matter what. And
I mean, that's kind of what we kind of have that with Doug. I mean, you have a guy that's going to out scheme you with whoever he has on the field.
Except he can't out scheme Andy Reid, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, I don't want to focus too much on the Chiefs game, but I mean, we were like a yard away from getting 24 points. I mean, and then obviously 24 is not enough to probably beat the Chiefs, but then we had the football again after that. I mean, the opportunities were there.
No, I know. It seemed, I don't know. I know it just kills me how Doug gets away from the run. Like, and I know he substitutes the run for those quick
Quick passes, the
throws.
quick screens.
Yeah, throws to the edge and getting the receivers out in space. Like, I get that compensates for the run, but we were gashing the Chiefs with the run. Like, why not run the
They were gashing us also on the other side of the
yeah,
football.
absolutely. So why not control the clock? I mean, the Chiefs had the ball for 10 more minutes than we did, you know? So
Mhm.
why not try to control the ball? Like maybe it's not a good idea to get into a shootout with the Chiefs. Like that's my only like yeah, get into a shootout with any other team, but maybe not the Chiefs. Like
But
maybe try to run the ball even though that's not what you want to do. Maybe in that game change your game plan a little bit.
But don't you find it funny that obviously Doug Peterson played for Andy, he coached under Andy for a long period of time. Don't you find it funny that both guys went away from the run as the game kind of came down the stretch? The Chiefs were Isaiah Pacheco was getting 6-7 yards a carry. Travis was gashing them. JaMychal Hasty had that one. He put Chris Jones in the dirt and got like 4 or 5 yards. I mean, but then as the game progressed, like this, it's what I mean. I guess it's just kind of in their DNA. They are passing coaches. I mean, as the game went the quarterback for the Chiefs could barely move and they're still throwing the football more than they're running it. I mean, it's just kind of like it's in both of their DNAs. It's like the offense isn't working. Let's just swing it around the yard. And like to be honest with you, I mean, as much as I love dominating the line of scrimmage, like when you have the quarterback battle like Trevor Lawrence and Patrick Mahomes, it's kind of fun to watch them be like, hey, we're gonna put this on your shoulders. We're gonna throw the ball for 3 downs, and we're just gonna see what happens from there. Like I do agree, we probably should have ran the ball more in hindsight, but it's just in both these guys' DNA. Like when we're struggling, we're going to fall back on the passing game.
Yeah, and it makes sense, but it just like it just kills me because like if you can like, you know, it's the art of war, it's the art of deception. So if you can run the ball, run the ball, and then use your quarterback to take a deep shot on play action and then score a touchdown on a big play. And I know Kirk had the big
We
drop.
did. I was just about to say,
Yeah, I know, I know,
did.
but like try it more than once, you know. And I know he actually tried to hit Marvin Jones a couple times on some deep passes.
Those were a little more prayers, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, but like if you do have a quarterback that you want to kind of put the game on their shoulders, like you can still use the run and then use play action and use your quarterback to take advantage of one-on-one coverages with receivers and maybe that's the problem because I was, you know, I'm working on my Calvin Ridley film breakdown video.
I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah.
because I was just wait till next year and then we get a guy that runs a low or high 4-3, low 4-4 in the offense that's just a precise route runner and also a known deep threat across the league. I think that's going to change this way. And that's why I said when I came back on your show in September, or maybe late August, sometime around then, I said I think we're a deep threat short from kind of taking it to the next level. Now we did kind of get to what I was referring to as the next level this season, but to get to where we can kind of dominate the regular season, be one of those top 3 seeds, dethrone Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo for one of the top seeds, I think it's going to take a guy like that in our offense to just really click on all levels.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Ridley's that. I mean, I got through week 1 of 2020 and I was like, my goodness, this guy is uncoverable. I mean, his
with a bad armed Matt Ryan at that point. So imagine once you give him Trevor Lawrence, I think it's a whole different animal.
Hopefully Ridley can catch the ball out of self-defense because that's one thing that we've learned receivers have to do with Trevor is they have to catch the ball out of self-defense. I mean, Marvin Jones.
You get
Jr.
paid a lot of money. Go catch the football.
I know, but I'm Marvin Jones Jr. Had turned into a sure-handed, great route runner to a guy who catches the ball out of self-defense and falls down. Like, that's what he turned into this year. I mean, every time he caught the ball, okay, Marvin, like it works, but like the guy wasn't even trying to run after the catch, and
Yeah.
so hopefully Ridley kind of gives us that extra element of that dynamic element for sure. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead.
Just another quick draft. Now, once again, off topic, but another quick draft thing. I know they were talking about moving Trayvon inside. He said he wants to work at edge rusher, but he's willing to move inside, which I know me and you know that he can absolutely do that. I mean, he can come in and excel that position. You don't take those guys number 1 in the draft most of the time. You don't take those like 3 tweener 5 techs at number 1 a vast majority of the time. But a guy, once again, what does Trent Baalke love to draft? He loves drafting guys coming off of injuries. Nolan Smith, Trayvon Walker's teammate at Georgia, he was the number 1 ranked player coming out of high school in the class of 2019, IMG Academy kid, edge rusher, pretty good pass rusher, probably needs to work on power move. Not ideal size. I think he's probably 6'3", 235, but in passing situations, maybe with our second round pick, he's coming off of injury. If he slips, maybe that's a guy to look at if we want to generate more pass rush heading into next season.
I drafted Nolan Smith in my Madden franchise, so I think that
Good sign.
I think that's a good. I also bundled all my picks together and went and got the tackle from Northwestern,
Peter Skoronski.
Yeah, and moved
He'll
him to
probably
guard.
play.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yeah, I was
So,
going to say they'll probably move to guard. He has short arm. He's a sub 33-inch arm. So that's a bit of an issue when it comes to the NFL. Yeah, it's a short, like great. And he's like, it's another thing is you can produce very well at the college level, but once you move to the NFL, it's just a whole different animal. So, I mean, he was a fantastic tackle for Northwestern, but he has those short arms. So we'll see if some team wants to kick him inside. And then how does that affect his draft value? I mean, he was a top 10 pick, but then they figure out how long his arms are and they drop to the second round. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's how the game plays.
it's like having tiny hands as a quarterback. It's a curse that you can't do anything about.
Who was the Brandon Allen, the Jags former quarterback out of Arkansas?
Yeah.
He actually pre-draft process went to some masseuse that massaged his hand out. His hand grew by like a quarter of an inch.
That's genius.
Absolutely, I don't know why more quarterbacks don't do it. I mean, go just for one day. I mean, because obviously he probably had small hands. I mean, we know Kenny Pickett and a lot of other guys have small hands. He went and he actually got his hand bigger because I don't know if it was like a chiropractor or a masseuse, but I very vividly remember that his hand got larger at one point. So
that's genius right there. I mean,
I know. I mean, that's next level thing. I mean, that's really having the will to win. If you ask me, that's taking it to the next level.
I was talking to a guy whose son was a punter at Cal, and whoever Cal's quarterback. I didn't know this, but apparently in college you can choose between a smaller ball and an NFL size ball. And there's actually two different sized balls that you're allowed to use, but the rule is if you choose the smaller ball, then your kickers have to use the smaller ball too. So what happens is a lot of these small-handed quarterbacks use the smaller ball in college, and that's why the hand size is a fear, because in the NFL you have to use the NFL size ball.
The ball is slightly different, and it's just shaped. Wait 1 second. I got a really cool gift from work. This is completely off topic. This is like in the attic of where I work.
Oh wow, that's
like
nice.
a game stamp Jaguar ball and everything. I mean, so the NFL ball is slightly different size than the college ball, but those kickers, what the kickers actually do is kickers will leave footballs outside because they get bloated, which makes them a lot easier to kick. So you have sometimes, I don't know if they allow them to do this anymore, but back in the day, you used to have designated kicking balls.
Yeah.
So you have like 3 or 4 footballs you could choose from. One of them usually be kicking ball for the punters and kickers because the ball was more bloated. And I don't know the PSI science behind it, but it gave you more distance on your punts and your kicks, and then you have throwing balls. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's way too complicated, to be completely honest with you.
Well, that's why Tom Brady went to all those efforts to deflate the balls. And
Deflate.
Listen, hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That's what.
Hey, Bill Belichick giving his famous "I'm no scientist, but," and then goes on and explain how PSI works and how cold affects PSI. All-time Belichick press conference.
Hey, Belichick's the man for a reason, man. For a reason. Well, I mean, I think that devolves off topic enough for us to probably call it quits there. So it's been a great show. I appreciate everyone that was in the chat. We had a pretty poppin' chat tonight. If you're still here and you have not yet followed Bubba, make sure to follow his Twitter, his YouTube, subscribe to the channel. All his information is in the channel description of this show. Make sure to do all that. Show him some love. He's going to be putting out content. As you can tell, he knows what he's talking about. He knows his X's and O's, and he does his homework better than I do because I am not versed on these guys at all. So should be a good time. Bubba, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can have you on here in the off season more often because we're going to need stuff to talk about for the next couple months. Am I right?
Hey, just text me whenever and I'll be on.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Hey, thank you to everyone that was here. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe everything. And then we'll see you on the next live show. Maybe tomorrow. Who knows?